Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Friday, TGIF. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the show, guys. We got a great show for you guys set up today. I know I said you guys way too many times, but this is one of them days. So first, we're going to make fun of Trump. Of course. When are we not? We're going to start out with that, a little bit of fun. Then we're going to go and examine the question if Donald Trump is too stupid to have gotten punished, to have not gotten punished, sorry, but to have actually done a criminal conspiracy with Russia. Well, there's one reporter that thinks, yes, that is absolutely the case. We're going to talk about that. Then we have the news about Maria Butina. Today we're going to talk about her. And then we've got a interesting phone call. Not us personally, but what was it? C-SPAN received an interesting caller from a Republican on whether or not he would vote for Bernie over Donald Trump. That's interesting. And then we have an NRA TV host basically losing it over a fake tweet that he said was Bernie Sanders. I'm going to show you what's going on here. The reality. And this is, of course, more pushback over Sanders basically wanting everybody to be able to vote, even if you're in prison. So we'll have fun. It should be an interesting kind of laid-back Friday. And, yeah, sit back, enjoy the show. Please hit the like button. Please share the stream. Before I get into it, I want to thank some patrons. Ramona Lewis, Seth Baker, Paula Ellis, and Andrew Irwin. Patrons of the day, so thank you for supporting us, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's what helps keep independent progressive media alive. Actually, there's a couple of new patrons that just signed up, and one of them is Barbara Sherman and Melvin Gutierrez. So thank you to all of those patrons that I shouted out. Okay, anyway. So now, no more new channel members at this time, but you can always sign up through the YouTube as well on that. Okay, either way, you're going to go and help the show. There's also merchandise, if you haven't checked that out already. Kind of awesome, including the TYT mug or some great T-shirts. All right, my shirt says Very Stable Genius, by the way, which is fun. What is it? Very Stable Genius. Very Stable Genius. I love it. All right. Anyway, so again, let's start out. We'll have some fun, including, on President Trump. Let's start with that. All right. So President Trump drew some ridicule for a misspelled tweet in which he claimed to be America's chief hostage negotiator. Of course, the word chief spelled wrong. Now, this is related, of course, to the news that Trump had allegedly paid North Korea, or will pay North Korea, a sum of $2 million for their treatment of Otto Warmbier. Like, not for their treatment, but for supposedly medical treatment. Well, now, wait a minute here. Otto Warmbier was in such bad shape when he was released into U.S. custody that he died soon after. Now, he was apparently tortured in a North Korean prison camp. He was in bad shape. He did not get those injuries here. He got those injuries in North Korea. Now, Donald Trump's like, oh, we owe you $2 million? Okay, we will pay you $2 million. Well, now, wait a minute. It's not us that should be making payments to North Korea. It is North Korea that should be making payments to the Warmbier family. I'm just saying. But our dotard-in-chief, not a smart person, not a very stable genius, right? And he says, oh, I'm going to pay it. I'm going to pay the sum. It's going to be tremendous. Oh, now, of course, here comes the twisty twist on this one. Various news reports have also said that even though Trump had originally agreed to pay it, the bill is unpaid. Shocker. And now, of course, later on, he comes out on Twitter and says, I never agreed to pay this money to North Korea. Well, you know what? I hope he doesn't pay it. Because that's outrageous. that North Korea would even say, yeah, you owe us $2 million for the medical treatment of Otto Warmbier. Get out of here. No, 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 no. Anyway, so now it's basically very typical Trump for him to promise to pay for something and then he doesn't pay for anything. And then he lies about promising to do it in the first place. The man is pathological. He has no idea, right? Then to add into it, when criticized, President Trump said this, President Donald J. Trump is the greatest hostage negotiator that I know of in the history of the United States. Nice third person here. Jeff Waldorf says you're an idiot. See, I can do third person too. 20 hostages, many in impossible circumstances, have been released in the last 2 years. No money was paid. Chief hostage negotiator, USA. Okay, look. Saying that you're going to pay for hostages, that's not good hostage negotiation. Especially when the hostages, when they're released, die from their injuries. That doesn't make any sense. Hey, you know what a actual good negotiation is? And not necessarily related to hostages, but a good example of negotiating a good deal would be the Iran deal, where Iran agreed not to develop nuclear weapons and complied with inspections. But of course, Donald Trump ripped that deal up. You know why? Because it was Obama. And because he's an idiot. So that said, Donald Trump's misspelled tweet and his plan to pay North Korea, which again makes no sense, got a lot of criticism from social media. Jug of Socialism, which I love that. Twitter handle says, President Donald J. Trump also has a great hog. Healthy and big. Definitely not crooked. He's a shower and a grower. Chief Dick Inspector, USA. I love it. Jeff Tiedrich says, I'm not sure how to break this to you, Mr. President, sir, but forking over $2 million ransom so that your dictator playdate with a brutal dictator can take place is actually the opposite of being the greatest anything, except maybe the greatest embarrassment ever. Chris, on the subject of hostage negotiation and hostage release, says you should negotiate the release of Melania. I love that. Oh, I'm pretty sure Melania's like, I can't wait for this guy to die for me to get his money. Hea Camus says, you have taken America hostage. That's not true. John Pavlovitz says, my 9-year-old can spell chief correctly. Of course, my 9-year-old also has more maturity, deeper moral conviction, better self-control, and a greater grasp of the issues. To be honest, it doesn't take much. Not to dismiss that I'm sure is a wonderful 9-year-old. But I don't know. It doesn't take a whole lot to be better than Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure most toddlers have more deeper self-control than Mr. President. Tony Poznanski says, effing install spell check on your phone. You're the effing president. And I can understand you screwing up big words by criminal. But chief? Yeah, I know. That's a difficult one to not get wrong. Nick Jack Pappas says, no wonder Trump served fast food at the White House. The chefs were being held hostage. You mean he wasn't interested in hamburgers? I know, right? Man. Then one more from Pappas says, Trump is holding the English language back, and maybe you should pay it whatever it takes to get it back. I love these. And Benjamin Dixon says, quote, is this like when you called around to see your own publicist to promote yourself? You know what? I almost forgot about that. That's really sad. Yes, he would call people up literally as John Barron, right? And say things, did you hear about the divorce of Donald Trump? And would say all these things about himself as someone else. And there are literal calls, right? There are literal tapes of this. Now, John Barron wasn't a real person. He literally made this person up in order to promote himself. Pathological. How sad is that? How demented is that? Imagine if a Democrat did any of that. Imagine how conservative media would respond to such a thing. And I'm not talking about just Trump posing as his own publicist. That's weird, right? No. It's Trump saying, I'm going to pay another country $2 million for medical bills related to that country torturing someone. I mean, again, North Korea tortured him so badly that he became comatose and then later died. And I'm pretty sure he hasn't treated, or I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure they haven't treated any kind of prisoner all that well. Imagine, though, if Obama did that, right? Obama hates his country. They'd scream. He's literally standing on Warbeard's grave while slapping the family in the face. I knew Obama was a radical communist supporting North Korea, wanting to give them money. How dare he? How dare he? They would be hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. And they'd never let us forget about the traitor Obama giving money to the North Koreans. I mean, they're still lying about us giving money to Iran. That wasn't our money. It was their money that we stole from them and that we released when we did the Iran deal. That was their money that they paid us before the revolution in Iran. But the hypocrisy never stops when it comes to right-wingers. It's amazing. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to the Bob Woodward story. You're going to love this. Oops. All right. Now, there's a lot of people that were rather upset when the Mueller report found no evidence of criminal conspiracy involving Russia. Now, there's a lot of people, a lot of pundits, spent 2 years saying how Donald Trump had conspired with the Russian government to hack the DNC. Now, to be fair, I was always skeptical about that, but even I fell victim to some speculation, and I'll be completely honest with you guys about that. That said, the one thing about this that I was never unsure about is how dumb President Trump is. He is monumentally stupid. And according to legendary reporter Bob Woodward, apparently not mentally capable of actually planning a conspiracy with the Russians. I actually agree with that. Now, on the heels of another book, of course, he plans to write, or has already written, he told Axios that he's very disturbed by how disorganized and out of the depth the president is as leader of the free world. Quote, "It's a governing crisis. He doesn't know how to govern." Woodward told Axios, "People who work with Trump say, you can't even organize your own government. How could you possibly organize a conspiracy with Russia? He doesn't even have a to-do list, as best I can tell." That's because he has no idea what he's doing. He's not a smart person. The president is so dumb, they contend, so incredibly incompetent, anti-intellectual, feckless, and possibly even mentally damaged that he could never pull off a conspiracy with Russia. Dang. And look, that may be harsh, but I agree with that. Now, that's not to say that the Russians didn't try. Of course they did. The report contains a great deal of evidence that Russian officials attempted to work with Donald Trump and his team, or at least his team and not Donald Trump himself, in numerous ways, and that many of them were aware and receptive of that help. But ultimately, Trump himself was just too dumb to do it. He ultimately was cleared, so far at least, because of his legendary incompetence. It's not that he didn't want to. He wanted to, but he was too dumb to make it happen. I mean, man. But then again, look, none of this should be surprising when you look at Donald Trump's record. I mean, for one, he's a failed businessman. He went bankrupt 6 times, despite getting a massive advantage, having more wealth when he was 6 years old than most of us will see in 20, maybe 30 years. He, again, has no business sense whatsoever. Daddy had to bail him out 6 times. 6 times. Just imagine being Donald Trump's dad and watching your son fumble and bumble around like an idiot. I mean, look, let's be honest. Donald Trump's dad, not a good person, terrible person, actually. And we've talked about that before, right? But he was a good businessman. Let's be fair about that. So every time Donnie messed up and got bailed out, imagine. I mean, look, again, he's not a good person. Trump's dad, and neither is Donald Trump, like father, like son. And so I can just imagine every time getting bailed out. Oh, how'd you run a casino into the ground again, you dummy, you loser, you sad baby? Boy, that explains why Trump is the way that he is. It's also kind of sad because look, he wanted so much to be loved by Daddy, but was just too much of a loser dummy to make it happen. Oh man! But as usual, his sheer lack of competence again shields him from facing real consequences. At the end of the day, sad. Okay. So let's go into Maria Butina. Kind of sum up our segment on this. All right. Now, earlier today, a federal court handed out a sentence to a woman convicted of being a Russian agent. Now, Maria Butina, 30-year-old Russian national, was convicted into up to 18 months in prison for not disclosing that she was a Russian agent to the Department of Justice, mainly to the Attorney General. Now, according to D.C. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkin, I'm not sure, the conduct was sophisticated and penetrated deep into U.S. political organizations. Now, one of the organizations has been named, and for that I go to the Daily Beast. They explained that she had courted gun rights and conservative activists inside the National Rifle Association. And because of that, had been arrested last July and charged with violating U.S. law. Now, that's the same law that bars people from acting as foreign agents without telling the Attorney General. That's the same thing that Paul Manafort got in trouble for anyway. Now, that is a charge that the Justice Department lawyers characterized as, quote, espionage light. So you're working on behalf of a foreign country, and you are trying to influence politicians here in America in order to do things that will help that foreign country that happens to be paying you. And it would be okay if you did that, so long as you told the Attorney General. Paul Manafort was arrogant enough to think, I don't have to do that. No, I don't want to tell the government that, so I can hide my money. Maria Butina, however, she claims, I didn't know the law. I wasn't even aware. Now, Butina did plead guilty back in December and actually had cooperated with the government. Now, here's what she did, according to the Daily Beast. While living in the U.S., Butina communicated with then Russian central bank officer Alexander Torshin about our efforts to build relationships with Americans. In one instance, she claimed that she had influence over who would become Trump's Secretary of State. Now, look, that may have been just a big claim. Like, oh, yeah, no, I definitely have influence over the Secretary of State of Donald Trump, which I don't think she ended up having, but that is a bold claim. And in December of 2015, she had helped arrange for a delegation of NRA leaders to visit Moscow. Now, they ended up meeting some very powerful figures in the Russian government. Now, what's interesting about that, and I think I did a story a while back that shows that Russian right-wingers and American right-wingers actually have a lot in common. Right-wingers are right-winger, right? And so they got together and they're like, we can work together so that we can, for one, create a stronger bond between the right-wing governments of our country, and two, kind of remake both of our countries to be even more right-wing. So again, they have that in common. Right-wingers is right-wingers, right? So now, it doesn't surprise me, as like I said, that they wanted to get closer and work together, right? However, if you're going to do that, if you're going to work on behalf of the Russian government in order to influence politicians and groups in America, then you have to sign up to be a foreign agent, and she did not. And as I mentioned before, her defense was, I didn't know that was illegal. Really? Now, I don't know if she knew or she didn't know, but ignorance of the law does not prevent people from getting in trouble when they break those laws. So, on the matter of the judge, well, the judge also agreed with that assessment, with my assessment, or I should say I agree with the judge's assessment, that the ignorance does not shield you from the impact. In fact, the judge goes further and says, this was no simple misunderstanding by an overeager foreign student. The crime that Butina pled guilty to is both serious and had jeopardized the country's national security. Now, look, if you claim to have influence over who could become Secretary of State, well, that would mean that you have a lot of influence on behalf of that foreign government. And so that could be problematic. Now, I know there are some people that are probably dismissing that. Oh, Russia, et cetera, right? Now, if you're saying so what, consider this. What if it's an Iranian national that comes over and starts courting people? For example, say it was the Obama administration. And this Iranian national comes over and starts courting people from the Council on American Islamic Relations, right? And says, oh, you know what? I have enough influence to be able to help make the decision on who would be Obama's Secretary of State. You know what would happen? Right-wing heads would explode. That's what would happen. Or, same thing. Let's talk about an Israeli national, right? Have been doing something on behalf of Israel. Every one of these situations should be considered very problematic. So, again, if you're burnt out on Russia, I get it, right? But remember, if Russia was able to do it, then why wouldn't Israel be able to do it? Or Saudi Arabia, right? Or maybe they already all have. So, and if that's the case, then shouldn't we know about it and actually put a stop to it? I think that would make sense. That would make sense. Now, one of the prosecutors, by the way, handling the case, Eric Kennerson, told the judge that Butina was executing a plan to establish contact between these two governments for the benefit of Russia. And he said, quote, the information was of extreme importance to the Russian Federation. Now, again, replace Israel, Saudi Arabia, or Iran with Russia, and you realize how problematic this is. And that is the ultimate conclusion that Kennerson comes up with. And he says, her conduct shows how easy it can be for a foreign government to target Americans in the U.S. Yeah, but also not just foreign governments, but remember, anyone. Our government seems to have a big problem with allowing people and corporations to be able to influence it, foreign or not. And then, of course, look, okay, so did Russia try to influence the election? Do we know that for sure? Yeah, I believe we do. Facebook ads, trolls, bots, etc., right? We know that, and we're pretty sure that it was, the Russian government that hacked the emails, the DNC, and gave them to WikiLeaks. Now, WikiLeaks, of course, says, oh, no, that didn't happen. Well, WikiLeaks would be really stupid to give up their source if the source was Russian government, right? So I actually think that's the right position for WikiLeaks to take, as it is, as they present themselves as a journalistic organization. Journalistic organizations generally do not reveal their sources. So now you might be saying, but yeah, Jeff, but it's stolen. They stole the emails. It was a foreign country that hacked in and stole the emails and gave them to WikiLeaks. Okay, I get that, right? But the fact that the emails were stolen doesn't actually invalidate anything that was inside the emails or make it any less part of the public interest, what Hillary Clinton and the DNC did, for example, to Bernie Sanders during the primary. And not only that, but look, other information that was stolen that was of the public interest were things like the collateral murder video that Chelsea Manning had stolen from the U.S. government. It doesn't make it any less horrible of a look on the U.S. government for killing civilians, the fact that it was stolen. The idea that the emails being stolen, making them less terrible, is kind of a preposterous idea. So, and As is the idea, of course, that Hillary lost the election solely because of the Russia stuff. No, I don't believe that at all. No, she was a weak centrist candidate to begin with. And I think, and as I've explained this a million times, her campaign died the death of 1,000 cuts. Russia just being one of them, right? And so I I have criticized the focus of the Democrats over the last 3 years, blaming Russia, Russia, Russia solely for that loss. It's maddening to me and other progressives because it ignores a lot of other factors, a lot of the other main factors about this, right? And if you are angry at people meddling in elections, you should get angry at our country for meddling in other countries' elections, as well as other countries other than Russia meddling in our elections. So it happens, and we need to put a start or put a stop to it for every country, right? But that said, let's not pretend that Butina and the Russian government are innocent. They're absolutely not. Now, I'm not going to play that game. This is a very nuanced situation. There's a lot of blame that goes to many different sides, many different places, some of which falls on Maria Butina, who is now paying the price for playing her part in this entire thing. Now, she has been given 18 months in prison, as I mentioned, but part of the deal is that she ended up getting time served. Now, she's been in jail for some time, about 9 months. That means she'll spend an additional 9 months in prison, and then afterwards will be deported to Russia. And so there ends the story of Maria Butina. Okay. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more stories, including a Trump voter that is mad at Trump and will vote possibly for Bernie Sanders. I love that. And then we've got an NRA host that loses it. So you're going to love that. All right. Anyway, before I go on this break, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Not only that, but if you could, send some messages. I'll read them after the break, and maybe some super chats as well. And so send those, and we'll do that. All right. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Around the Nation. Welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, it's got some fun comments that I want to read from the chat here. Sarchek says, of course, Russia meddled, but it was helping Trump, so he did not care or want to stop it. Yeah, I think that's a fair enough assessment. I mean, again, he's too dumb to have organized a conspiracy. I mean, this is the guy who said, oh, Russia, go ahead and hack Hillary Clinton's 30,000 emails, her deleted emails. And there's a guy who's just puts it out there. Hey, foreign government, go hack Hillary's emails. He's not a smart person. He's super, super dumb. And so he's too dumb for a conspiracy. Because everything's just out in the open. He's too stupid. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that, though. Jeff James disagrees with me. Says, North Korea should not pay any money to the family of Otto Warmbier. And then, of course, later on had also mentioned that, did they treat Warmbier worse than any family? No. I'm saying it'd be a start, right? Yeah, you know what? For one, North Korea shouldn't torture anybody. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. I think that should not be a controversial statement. And at the same time, look, why shouldn't they? What's the reason to be against North Korea paying restitution to the families of the people that they torture, right? I'm just asking. So, I don't know. If you think it's a bad idea and you want to give me a reason why it's a bad idea, all right. I will take it into consideration. All right. Anyway. So now, one more here. Camo Jor says, too dumb to jail to me means too dumb to hold office. Well, that's why I kept talking about the 25th Amendment. Got to do the 25th because he's literally too stupid to be president. I think the only saving grace has been that there have been adults in the office that, even though they're hardcore Republicans and they love the stuff that Trump wants to do, cut taxes for the rich, deregulate industry, and even do horrible things with immigration, they're like, we got to police this guy because he could really mess some things up. We got to watch over this guy. We got to make sure he doesn't do the dumbest things. He's going to do dumb things. He's going to tweet dumb things. That's fine. But we got to prevent him from literally lighting the country on fire. Because I feel like he's the kind of guy that would do that. So, all right. Anyway. Moving on. Let's get into the stories here. A couple more for you. Let's go to the Bernie story. All right. So there's some Trump voters that are starting to feel some regret over their vote in 2016. And in the case of one North Carolina Republican is actually open to supporting Bernie Sanders if he is the Democratic nominee. And, of course, if there are no Republicans that decide to challenge Trump. Watch.
Let me say this. For the last election, I trusted Trump. I thought he was going to throw a monkey wrench into the elite establishment and make America great again. And I'm just a regular guy. I'm in sales, and I thought that the whole economy would change across the spectrum. Well, here we are, 4 years later, and I got to say, he lied. I'm no better off. My friends who are regular workers are no better off. The Midwest, the Electoral College, no better off. And so this year, if I don't have someone to challenge him on our side, I'm voting for Bernie. I'm voting for Bernie because he makes the most sense. By the way, I'm paying $387 for a bottle of diabetic medicine. So there are a lot of issues I like with Bernie, and he just makes more sense. Thanks.
So
he just makes more sense. Bernie Sanders. And this is why Bernie Sanders is the most electable out of the entire Democratic field. I know some people are like, no, you got to be kidding me, right? No. Here's Republican, right? This is Republican callers only saying, no, the guy makes sense. He makes sense, and he's for change. This is somebody I think who would have voted for him if he had the opportunity. Instead, what we had is we had Hillary Clinton, who was not for the people. She was for large corporations and the establishment. Now, Hillary Clinton was honest about who she was. We all knew she was for the establishment. She was for big business. She was for status quo, right? Now, Trump, however, Trump lied. And he did so very, very successfully. And he ended up getting a lot of people to vote for him because he thought, well, as this guy put it, throw a monkey wrench into the establishment, right? Now, obviously, that did not happen. It turns out Donald Trump loves the elite, and he's like, I'm more elite than the elite now. No, wait a minute. You were supposed to tear down the elites, at least according to what he was saying before. Now he became the elite. Interesting how that works out. But look, here's the thing. People, and it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, most people care about issues, right? And believe it or not, Donald Trump actually ran an issue-based campaign. I know, right? According to studies done after 2016, Trump was found to have run more issue-based ads than Hillary Clinton. Now, what was Hillary Clinton's strategy? Trump bad. Well, yeah, we know Trump's bad. But what are you going to do? What are your issues? What are you going to change? Oh, right. There is no change. Now, this is the same strategy that Joe Biden seems to be adopting now. Oh, look, Trump's an aberration. We need to get America back to normal. This is not normal. And he's right. It's not normal. But if we just go to the way that it was back in 2015, pre-Trump, then everything's going to be fine. The world's going to be great. Well, no, for the millions of Americans struggling, going back to that and making no change forward is just going to create the conditions to create another Donald Trump. And this time, we might not be so lucky as to get someone who's a complete and utter moron. That's no vision, right? No, Americans want somebody who's going to care about them and who's going to actually talk about the issues, right? And look, I understand that there are people in the Democratic Party that don't seem to get that. That's why they're like falling all over Buttigieg, right? Buttigieg is all fluff, no substance. All fluff, no substance. He doesn't have policy positions. And of course, Joe Biden right now doesn't have policy positions and is basically continuing with the fluff, the platitudes. That said, when it comes to issues, we've got more from this caller. Take a look.
Is healthcare a top issue?
Absolutely. I think healthcare is a top issue for what we call human beings, because without our health, we're dead.
Yeah.
You see, so health has to be the top issue for everyone, regardless of party. Would you agree?
Well, Bernie, let me ask you, so you voted for the president in 2016. How did you vote in the midterm elections in 2018?
I didn't.
You didn't. You stayed home.
I stayed home, yeah, because let me just put it to you this way. For the last 40 years, there have been 6 consecutive presidents that have favored the rich companies, and I'm a what you call an old-fashioned Republican. I don't go for other type stuff, which I won't get into. So that's why I voted for Trump, because he promised the Midwest is going to regain what it once had. Ask anyone in the Midwest. Ask people in the middle of the country, are they better off? The answer is hell no. And Bernie Sanders is the only person running that's for actual people.
The only one running who's actually going to represent people. Now, again, you go back, he talked about policy, right? Healthcare, prescription drugs. That's a top issue, and it should be a top issue. I also should argue that climate change would be, and maybe a lot of Republicans might disagree with that, but it also should be at least in the top 3. Nonetheless, Democrats ran on healthcare during the midterm. A lot of Democrats, because that was a top issue. And guess what? Democrats swept the House. They won 40 seats. Now, in the Senate, you know who lost? the moderate Democrats, the ones who didn't talk about health care, the ones who didn't talk about progressive visions, right? That was Claire McCaskill. Claire McCaskill, Joe Donnelly, again, your moderate, milquetoast, establishment Democrats who hated on single payer, they lost. They lost. And look, Medicare for all, that's the plan that Bernie Sanders and progressives are putting forward. Now, it's always been Bernie's plan. At least he's been the one that has pushed it into the mainstream for decades, and been trying to push it in the mainstream for decades, and finally, after 2016, had been able to do so. And now here's a Trump Republican, right? Or at least a Trump voting Republican saying, yeah, you know what? That plan, he makes the most sense. He makes the most sense. I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same, a lot of Republicans. Now, Fox News knows this, and that's what's interesting about this. Fox News, Bernie Sanders goes on Fox News and crushes it. Has 2.5 million people that watch the town hall. Got a ton of cheers from, working class Republicans. He crushed that. And Fox News is like, I think we made a mistake. I think we did something wrong. And so they have been attacking the Green New Deal. They've been attacking Medicare for all. And the Republicans have been intensely focused on attacking it since. Because guess what? It's popular. It's popular with 70% of Americans who are in favor of expanding Medicare to everyone, single payer. It is a popular position. Back in the Green New Deal, 80% of Americans support a Green New Deal. Even a majority of Republicans. Now, of course, if you ask the questions on policy, strictly policy, more people are receptive to it. But there is this little trick, right? Where pollsters, and we've seen this with a recent new Green New Deal poll, they throw in political labels, right? So it's like, oh, well, AOC is in favor of this policy, and then you see Republican support drop like a stone, right? I think it drops somewhere to about 50% among people being polled. So if you leave that out and you just talk about policy as what Bernie Sanders is doing, then that's what gets people interested. It's what gets people shaken out of their partisan, BS, which I don't think they should be in that. I don't think that should matter. I think what should matter is policy. If a Republican comes up with a great idea and pushes that idea, I'm in favor of it. Why? Because a good idea is a good idea. I don't care what team you're on, right? And that's how Americans should be. That's how it used to be. That's how it should be again. Unfortunately, we have this stupid team mentality, and it actually hurts. The closest example I can get to that is the question of the ACA versus Obamacare, right? So now they asked Kentucky, right? People in Kentucky had this healthcare exchange set up called Connect, right? So now reporters went down there, and they're like, hey, do you like the ACA? Do you like Connect? And people were like, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Well, do you like Obamacare? No, hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Well, why? Propaganda. The power of propaganda works. It's super, super sad, too, how that partisanship, that propaganda, spread mostly by Fox News, really gets in the way of actual good policy. But at least there are Republicans and independents who don't care about the labels as much, who care about the policy, and they look at Bernie Sanders as someone who brings these good policies and has a record of authenticity. And I think that's what matters a lot. He's got authenticity. He's got the receipts to back it up. He's been in favor of these policies for decades, and they trust him. Look, this is a great example of why Bernie Sanders will win the general election. Oh, but Jeff, they haven't been blah, 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 right? They're going to call him a socialist and all that stuff. No, when you look at the policies are incredibly popular. And what does Bernie Sanders do better than anyone else? Well, maybe with the exception of Elizabeth Warren. Talk policy. Get people interested in policy. Now, Elizabeth Warren's got amazing policy that she continues to roll out with. But she's not able to sell it very well. Bernie Sanders has both policy and the ability to sell it. And so those are the reasons why Bernie Sanders, if he's the nominee, will win the general election. Okay. All right. One more story here. Let me get the video ready for you guys. All right. An NRA TV host lost it after reading a tweet sent from a fake Bernie Sanders Twitter account. Watch.
You know you have gone off the liberal deep end when even the entertainer Cher criticizes insane policies like allowing terrorists and sex offenders to vote from behind bars. Bernie Sanders loves the idea. The socialist self-aggrandizer simply wants votes. Cher thinks the idea is ludicrous. Bernie bots attack her on social media. The very liberal Cher restores what little faith I have left in those on the left when she responded like this. Terrorists killed innocent people. I'm sick of being nailed to the cross because you people think I'm a racist. I'm not going to defend myself. Care for all people. Try to help all people, Cher said. Excuse the out of me if I don't want murderers, rapists, child molesters of every color to vote. You hear that? Of every color. It's not a black or white thing. It's a right or wrong thing. Terrorists voting? Give me a break, Bernie Sanders. The fact is, it may be one of Bernie Sanders' responses to Cher that is the most offensive. Who cares about a few terrorists, he writes. Who cares about a few terrorists? I would argue the family members of hundreds of victims of the Boston bombings. That's who. All of us who lived through 9/11, who knew people who died there and felt it firsthand, what jihad means and what it is, death to America. We care, Bernie Sanders and your supporters. We care about terrorists not voting from behind bars. The 5.5 million members of the NRA care because we love this country. And no, we don't think people who denounce everything America stands for should get a say in where it's headed.
Wow. You realize that tweet was fake, bro, right? Like, really? You didn't know that that was fake? Okay, I guess let's kind of start with the beginning, right? So he's like, look at Cher. I'm actually going to quote it, and I'm actually going to agree with her because Bernie Sanders has jumped off the liberal deep end. For one, Cher is terrible. So I'm sorry, Cher fans. You follow her Twitter account. She's 100% establishment and the epitome of bourgeois liberal. And so not interested in Cher. But anyway, so no, she argued, well, how dare people, you give people in jail the right to vote. I mean, we should take away every one of their rights because everyone in prison is naturally a child rapist, pedophile, murderer, etc. No, you actually look at the numbers of people in prison. They're from one, disproportionately African American, and also disproportionately non-violent offenders. So, hey, you ever wonder why people were saying that you were racist? Or that you have a racist take on this issue? It's because you weren't arguing on the facts. But anyway, you want to argue the merits about people voting from prison? Okay. Well, all right, let's do that, right? So now, for one, let's just get something simple out of the way. Terrorists, foreign terrorists, like the people in 9/11, could never vote in the first place. You know why? They're not American citizens. Now, domestic terrorists, that's something different, and let's be fair about that. The Boston bomber, for example, the guy that's being touted as the face of Bernie Sanders' new proposal to allow people in prison to vote, yeah, I guess he could. Now, but the thing is, the reaction to it, right, is everybody thinks, yeah, but he's going to vote himself out of prison. No, that's not a thing. That's absolutely absurd. No, what is the harm in it? And it's not like it's going to matter anyway. Look, saying that you're worried about him voting is basically admitting that you think democracy doesn't work. You have no faith in democracy, or you believe that, or you actually don't believe in democracy. Now, there's a couple of mindsets here, right? Number one is prison is a punishment where you give up every single one of your rights and liberties when you're locked away. Now, to me, that seems rather absurd, right? No, I think that, yes, there are certain rights that you give up when you, become a criminal, basically, and you get locked away. The main one is your liberty to go and do whatever you want. Now, that doesn't eliminate all your rights. You still have a First Amendment right to, for example, your freedom of religion, right? So what's so wrong about people being able to cast an absentee ballot when you're in prison? That is one of your rights. It doesn't hurt anyone that they still have that right. So I don't quite understand. Oh, but you don't understand, Jeff. Terrible people are going to vote. And terrible people already vote. And not only that, but there are terrible people that are in politics. You know that we have presidents who are literal war criminals. Look at Dick Cheney. Look at Henry Kissinger. Those are two incredibly terrible people that I can guarantee have killed more people than I think some of the worst murderers in prison, right? I mean, sure, they didn't go there and do it, themselves. They didn't pull the trigger, but it sure was on their orders. The invasion of Iraq, for example, killed millions of innocent Iraqis. They can vote. They held office. And right now, a lot of them are still sitting pretty somewhere else, vacation. But look, that's not even my argument, right? No, my argument is, what about the millions of people that are in prison for nonviolent offenses? Things like possession of marijuana, for example. Those people are disproportionately black. And by the way, they're counted on the census. So they're counted on the census, yet they are blocked from being able to vote. They cannot exercise their vote. So those people, they don't have a voice. And I think that's the whole point. The whole point in being against this is, I don't want those black people voting. And there are liberals like Cher that are basically have bought into the right-wing propaganda spewed by this guy. People like this. And the whole purpose is to get them all riled up to think, oh, there's terrorists, there's bad people voting. Therefore, we shouldn't let anybody vote that is in prison. No, that's a ridiculous, position, and one that is purely based on emotion. It is an appeal to emotion, and all the liberals that have fallen for it, you have fallen for that emotional trap. And that's what the Republicans do. It's a trap, right? Those people, they do not have a voice. And it was by design. They want to keep black and brown people disenfranchised, which ends up being voter suppression, which unfortunately we do really, really well here in America. We make sure that as few people vote as possible, when we should make sure that more people, as many people vote as possible. So what they do is that they do that appeal from emotion by pointing out the worst of the worst, the rapists, the terrorists, the murderers, right? And then use that as an excuse to try to continue the disenfranchisement of large majorities of black people. And so they're going to get people like Cher on their side, in the side against justice, when we should all be for justice. Prison should be about rehabilitation, reintegration into society instead of just punishment. And I realize that sometimes that's impossible, right? There are in some cases that you'll never be able to rehabilitate some people. But I think there should be the goal, the overall goal, instead of the punishment model that we have today. And so we need massive criminal justice reform. Now, as for Stinchfield, again, I want to show you where he messed up, right? Well, he messed up on a lot of things, but this is the biggest one. When he went on to claim that Bernie Sanders himself had said this, why are you playing into this? Who cares about a few terrorists? What, you notice something? That's not Bernie Sanders' Twitter account. I know, I follow the Twitter account. This is literally a random person, a Twitter rando that he's quoting as Bernie Sanders. That's ridiculous. completely 100% false, fake news. But his whole show, to be fair, is all about spreading fake news. On Election Day 2016, by the way, as an example of this, Stinchfield read from and discussed an article in the NRA magazine about the horrors of a Hillary Clinton presidency, right? Which, look, a Hillary Clinton presidency would have brought literally no change. Now, the article, which raised the prospect of Syrian refugees establishing an Islamic State in the United States, culminating in a nuclear attack on a U.S. soil. This is what he shared and called truth, right? Oh my God, that's going to happen. They're going to create an Islamic State, and then they're going to nuke the United States from inside, from Oklahoma. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. There is no Islamic group that's going to go and create Sharia law in the middle of Oklahoma and then nuke us from inside. That's the kind of fake news this guy spreads. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and a complete and utter fabrication. As usual, the right has nothing, no policy, nothing to help regular Americans, so they resort to fear-mongering, lying, and making things up. Okay. That's all I got. Thank you guys for tuning in, going around the nation with me. Please like and share the stream. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you guys on Monday. TYT is next. Around the nation.